Well, hey there. Welcome back to the Sons of UCF. This is Sons Today. My name is Adam, and I'm with my good friend and yours, Brian W. Peterson, who has been kind enough to wade through the filth of the weekend and all of the negativity to join me here for another episode of Sons Today. Brian, we're going to get into football here in a few minutes. Obviously, that's a predominant topic around here, but let's start with some good news, Brian. Let's try some positivity here tonight. Two really good things are happening in UCF athletics right now. On Sunday, your UCF men's soccer team, Brian, Sun Belt champions, baby. How does it feel? We have won the Sun Belt in soccer. Marshall goes down 3-1. UCF wins the Sun Belt tournament. Brian, your reaction to having a Sun Belt championship now as part of our lore?
Vibes are good, Adam. Vibes are good. We have gone from a football school to a football school. So you know what? And it's always good to get a win over Marshall if you're old enough. If you're following along with this show, you've probably been a UCF fan. Hopefully you've been a UCF fan long enough to remember the Marshall rivalry and what it meant to UCF fans. So always fun to get a win over the thundering herd of Marshall.
Well, and this was a soccer team, Brian. They started off, I think, like 3-5-1. I think we all assumed like this was just another down year for soccer. And again, I know that's not the most popular sport on campus, right? But certainly it looked like this was not going to be a team that was going to make a ton of noise. And all of a sudden they come from behind and they surprised some folks in the Sun Belt, upsetting Kentucky along the way. And so a good result for Coach Calabrese. I think their first time in the tournament since 2020, if I have that right. So they haven't been dancing in a while. We'll find out Monday if they host or not. The great Eric Lopez is projecting them as a 31 RPI. So we'll see if that's enough to get them to host. I think the selection show is Monday, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So we'll find out there too. But congrats to the soccer team on, I think it's our second. Well, so it's not a Big 12 championship though. So we have one Big 12 championship in rowing, I believe. This is our second championship, not in the American, I guess.
In the Sun Belt, the Fun Belt, if you will.
The Fun Belt, which I know it's the Sun Belt, but there are certain conferences, the Big 12 among them. I think the SEC another that doesn't have soccer,
exactly,
and so you have to find a way to play, right? So it's not like UCF's playing what you would think traditional Sun Belt teams might be in a football or basketball sense. This is kind of a really weird amalgamation of teams that have men's soccer that can't play in their traditional conference. So it's a nice victory for the Knights. Again, a championship coming back to Orlando. So tip of the cap to Coach Calabrese and the soccer team for bringing that home. Women's soccer obviously won first round in the NCAA tournament. They'll go play Duke now here sometime midweek. So maybe we are a football school, Brian. Maybe just the wrong kind of football.
School, yeah. Women's soccer knocking off Maine, so they advance and they'll face the Blue Devils of Duke. And we know how we play against Duke. Sometimes not the greatest, heartbreaking fashion. If you think back to that NCAA tournament, but vibes are high, Adam. We're not talking about that right now.
We're not though. That's a tough one though. It's speaking of Duke and speaking of that tournament. That would be basketball you're referring to. And Brian, the men's team went to Texas A&M on Friday night, had a really nice victory over SEC Texas A&M. I think, a lot of us aren't really sure what to make of the basketball program week in and week out, right? Every year they have new players, new guys on the team, and they look really good against FAMU, but they got stomped against Vanderbilt. So it's really hard to figure out what to make of this men's hoops team, Brian. But you go on the road and you beat an SEC team. That's not nothing, right? I mean, that's something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's second year in a row that we've knocked off Texas A&M in the basketball realm. Now, if you wanted to be completely honest, I don't think A&M is the strongest SEC team in the men's basketball division, but it is a quality road win, and anytime you get a win over an SEC opponent, we'll certainly take it. And the men's team played well enough to secure the win. So vibes are high in the other sports, Adam.
Yeah, SEC had the best conference last year in basketball, right? So this win may end up being something for the Knights down the road. I think it's a quad 1 or quad 2. It'll depend, I think, on how Texas A&M plays. But Brian, we saw something in this basketball thing we haven't seen in a long time. People actually made shots. Camarlo Pacheco, 15 points, made a bunch of threes. Jordan Burks carried the team with 21 points. This is a team that, again, we don't know what to expect. And it's certainly been a bit of an interesting, start to the season for the Knights, right? They lose exhibition matches, come back, and they beat a couple teams. They look terrible against Vandy, and a nice win. Let me ask you this, though, Brian. You're a historian of UCF, somebody who's been around the program and the athletics a ton. How does this help Johnny Dawkins? Is this I mean, I know we're kind of talking about Johnny, and is this something that you're willing to go, hey, maybe this is it, maybe he's got the team, or are you still fully in wait and see mode right now?
It's got to be wait and see mode at this point. Like I said, Texas A&M not the strongest basketball team in their conference. So while this is a fun win for UCF to put in the history books, and certainly you never blink, bat an eye at an SEC win. We'll certainly have to see how conference play plays out for Johnny Dawkins and what this team is able to do in the Big 12 tournament.
And I'll say, if this team can continue to play like this, it'll be fun to watch this basketball
Sure.
team throughout the season, right? If they can continue to shoot like this, and they're playing at a high tempo right now, if they can keep that up, it'll be fun to see how this team progresses. Obviously, non-conference play is still coming up, and then we'll hit the conference schedule, I think, January 3rd against Kansas. So that's it'll be fun to see. It'll be a nice little treat for us UCF fans who haven't had the basketball program do a ton of late. So it could be fun, Brian. But what wasn't fun was what happened in Lubbock on Saturday when our beloved UCF Knights football team went to Lubbock. And I don't know if they knew what time the game started. maybe they didn't get the memo of the kickoff time. Maybe someone forgot to tell them. And they were just like, hey, we need 11 of you out here really quickly.
Quick.
It seemed like that's exactly how things, unfolded, Brian. 48-9 is the final score. Texas Tech was up 14 before you had a chance to open your first drink, I imagine, if you're watching.
Oh my gosh.
And it didn't get much better from there, Brian. You've now had 24, 36-ish hours to digest this. I know you were talking with Bailey immediately following the game. Has anything changed for you as you've kind of had some time to sleep on this? Maybe have a couple of stiff drinks about this. Has anything changed for you in terms of what you thought immediately following the game and where you think about it on Sunday?
It's funny you should mention the stiff drinks because usually you and I have a fresh seltzer or perhaps a Celsius when we talk about these things. I had to go something a little stiffer this evening after the whooping that the Knights took yesterday afternoon. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest, Adam. We knew what was going to happen in this game before the game even started, right? Texas Tech is a perennial top 25 team, coming in ranked number 6th in the country. They have spent upwards of $28 million is the number that I've heard out there on a roster this year. So they are pushing for a deep college football playoff run. So considering the fact that UCF is in full-on rebuild mode, Scott Frost year 1, year 0, whatever you want to call it, and considering the injuries that we've had, towards the end of the season, and I will emphasize we're already towards the end of the season at this point, we knew that this was going to be a tough game for Knights fans to watch. You mentioned that they were able to score some points. Texas Tech was able to score some points before the game was even on. For those of you who were able to find the Fox Business Channel, if you even had it, 4 plays and Texas Tech was on the board with 7 points before the game was even broadcast on Fox. They followed that up with another touchdown. So they had 14 points on the board after only 14 plays of offense from the Texas Tech team. So it was going to be a long day for the Knights, and it turned out to be. But like I said, we knew what we were getting into coming into this game. So if anyone was legitimately expecting a fight or a win from the Knights, I'm afraid you were sadly mistaken.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's 2 camps, right? You're I think articulating the one camp, which is this was always going to be an uphill battle. This was a tough team, 6th ranked team in the nation. You knew you had your road game where UCF has not played well on the road, so you knew that your work was cut out for you, right? And then there's the other camp that's like, hey, we were going to lose perhaps. And maybe that's, obviously Vegas had us losing this game. I think we were 23.5 point
24.5 was what I saw.
24.5, even better, going to this game. So the smart money was UCF was going to lose, but it didn't even look like they belonged on the same field as Texas Tech. And Scott Frost post game, I think the good thing about you and I talking Sunday is you and Bailey talk right after. You don't have the luxury of knowing what Scott Frost said. You don't have the luxury of kind of understanding all the ins and outs of a post game. Scott Frost said afterwards, it didn't even look like they were on the same field. It looked like Texas Tech's speed was greater than theirs. Their effort was greater than theirs. Their energy was greater than theirs. And I think, man, that's a concern, right? Like talent is one thing, but it didn't, once again, the team doesn't look like they got off the bus. We saw the same story at Baylor, and before you know it, you're down. And we've talked about this all year long, Brian. This is not an offense that can come from behind when you're already down a couple of scores, let alone 2 scores, in the first half of the first quarter. And it feels like it's steamrolled from there. So where are you with this? Sounds like you're kind of in the camp of, hey, I didn't expect to win. I knew this was a tough battle, but were you surprised, disappointed? Are you accepting of the level of effort and the level of competition you saw from the Knights on Saturday?
That's a good question, and I don't know that I have a direct answer for you. I mean, I explained this to Bailey on the immediate post game that we did on the Pegasus podcast yesterday, which was I didn't have any nerves coming into this game. Usually, as a game gets closer to kickoff on any given Saturday, I am complete, train wreck when it comes to nerves. I'm expecting us, are we going to play well? Are we going to win? What's this going to mean for our season? So on and so forth. Absolutely no nerves for this game at all because I knew what the result was going to be. Now, that being said, I will point out that UCF was able to score more points, albeit with a safety, aiding the final score game score for the Knights. We were able to score more points than both BYU and Oklahoma State did against a pretty good Texas Tech defense. And when I say good Texas Tech defense, I mean they went out and they spent quite a bit of money. And all credit to Texas Tech and the team that they've put together. But I mean, they've got some of our best defensive players on their team this year. One, Lee Hunter, for example, for those of you who are familiar with prior Knights teams, now playing in a Texas Tech black jersey. So I feel okay with the fact that the team went out, and Scott Frost mentioned this in his post-game presser, that the team did come out and play with heart, and they did, they did try to win the game. So that's something that as a coach you want to see. Obviously that didn't equate to a win on the field, but guys were out there and they were making plays when they could. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that towards the end of the first half, Texas Tech started to pull their starters. They put in their quarterback 2, and they started to pull their players. And when they did that, UCF did seem to kind of get things moving a little bit. And I don't know if that was because, the level of talent on the Texas Tech side of the ball took a step down because, those were the backup players, or UCF was perhaps finding some momentum. But it did feel like things started to level out just a little bit, at least. So if you're a Knight fan, there's some hope there that, maybe there's a little bit more parity than we think when you look at a Texas Tech team that's just been dominating teams all year long versus this rebuild mode for the Knights.
Well, as you say that, I look at the box score, and Texas Tech scored 24 points in the second quarter.
Well,
now the second half, UCF holds them to 10, but yes, at
correct.
This point, I think Tech had, their third, fourth, second, whoever the coaches were playing at that point for Texas Tech.
They were pulling people from the stands.
Yeah, a couple of students got in there. Again, it was clear that this was a tale of two teams, and UCF kind of went into this overmatch, Brian. And so, yeah, I was with you. I wasn't nervous going into the game. Actually, I think it was the third play of the game. I think Taven tried to do a handoff and he dropped the football. And I started laughing hysterically because it's like, this is just what this team has been this season. And I guess that's the interesting thing. Like, the more you think about it, 10 games in, it seems like, how the hell did we beat West Virginia and North Carolina? That seems like the aberration. Like, how did we play so well in those games? Because, you haven't really, seen that a lot. And what do you make of, I want to get your take.
They were at home. I will give you that. They were at home versus on the road.
I want to give you an option to kind of respond to this before I give you my take. Scott Frost continues to say, man, we're close. Man, we're a couple plays here and there, and we're close. Your assessment of the Scott Frost "we're close" mantra right now?
I think it's a combination of both coach speak, trying to encourage his players, and a little bit of honesty. I think that he probably legitimately believes that we are close to putting things together enough to be where perhaps he wants to be this year. I don't know that says much for the 2026 season and beyond. Obviously, that's going to have to, they're going to have to deal with NIL and the portal and all that fun stuff. But I think that he legitimately believes, and I think that it's probably true to some degree, that we could be a bowl eligible team if a couple, things bounce our way. maybe a couple plays wind up differently and we don't shoot ourselves in the foot as much. So I do think that there is some honesty in what he's saying. Of course, it hasn't shown itself on the field, so that's got to be frustrating from a coach's perspective. But I think he's trying to be a little bit honest, and he's also trying to keep these guys motivated, right? He knows that they're hearing every word that the coach says, and he doesn't want to be a Debbie Downer, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a fair call, right? I think I'm getting a little bit sick of hearing we're close, right? I mean, especially after a game that you lose 48-9, and you want to talk about, hey, a couple more games this year that we had a chances, and where this is a different story. It just feels like we're trying to keep pointing back to we're close, and it's hard to say that we're close. And then you kind of, I look at it like I'm a jury member, right? And I look at the prosecution giving me this big case and say, my client didn't do it. And I'm looking at all the evidence. I'm like, well, he kind of actually did do it, right? And so I'm like, I'm hearing Scott Frost.
That's where we're at.
Like, we're close. And
we're
I'm
adjudicating.
Like, okay,
we're adjudicating the 2025.
Are we though? Like, we're close, but are we really close? Like, look, the reality of this team right now, and I guess this is the hard pill to swallow, because this shouldn't be surprising. I'll give you all credit in the world, because as we sit here and record, you are most likely going to be dead on accurate with your season prediction of 5 wins for the Knights, right? They're sitting at 4 right now. They open as a 16-point favorite against Oklahoma State at home. So you'd think that maybe that's a 5th win for UCF, and you think the BYU game probably lost, finishing 5-7. So we are right where you thought we were going to be. I think many people had UCF in that 5-win, 6-win. Some of us, hand up, including me, were idiots enough to think maybe a 7-win, but we're right in that little circle of where UCF was. Yet it doesn't feel, it just feels different when you see the way the games are going and the way things are happening, and where the record is versus kind of what you thought it is, Brian. Because here's the problem. We're certainly not deep enough, right? We've seen that with the injuries UCF has faced so far, and there's a ton of them. And yes, that's a reason. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it's certainly a reason why you're.
And Scott Frost mentioned that in his post game presser as well.
He's brought that up, right? So we're certainly injured. We don't have a ton of depth. I was looking at the sidelines at one point. They took like a sideline shot, and there's a couple of dudes like standing behind Frost when he was like on camera, wearing like number 70 something, number 60 something. I assume they're offensive linemen. Brian, they look like Hollywood actors. Like the jerseys look too big for them. Like just the size didn't necessarily look like what you'd see from a Big 12 team. So we don't have the depth, we don't have the size, we certainly don't have the playmakers, we don't have the consistency, we can't stop shooting ourselves in the foot. And last but not least, we don't have consistent quarterback play. Like there are a lot of slashes against this team that, for whatever reason, at times we were able to put it together. I think that maybe fooled all of us into thinking like, okay, maybe we're faster along than we thought. Maybe we're different. But the Texas Tech team was just a juggernaut, and it was a really stark example of the haves and the have-nots. And it's clear UCF is very much on the have-nots. And yes, money is one thing, and I get it, but you can tell across the board: development, size, depth, skill position players, consistency, not creating turnovers, all of those things. It was clear UCF was on the have-not side.
Yeah, this game, if I had to compare this game to a prior season game, I'd have to go look back at the 2016, ironically enough, a game that Scott Frost in his first tenure at UCF coached. The Michigan game that UCF went on the road to Ann Arbor and played in Michigan, and at the Big House, excuse me, and a very similar feeling game. In that game, another one that comes to mind is the 2006 game in Gainesville against the Gators, who of course went on to win a national championship that year. We were outclassed 42-0 in that game as well. And both of those games, we just got pushed around the line of scrimmage, right? So as you had mentioned, offensive line being a weak spot for this team this year, certainly something that the coaches and Scott Frost are going to have to evaluate as this season comes to an end, and go to work finding some guys to fill some of the needed holes at the offensive line and other positions as well, right? The depth is seriously a problem. We're down to 2 quarterbacks now. I think in his post-game presser, Coach Frost mentioned that we were going to be without Cam Fancher and Ja'Curry Brown probably the rest of the season now. He said they're, quote, unavailable or going to be unavailable. So that leaves us with just 2 quarterbacks, Taven and Davi Belfort. And we saw both of them took, meaningful snaps in this game against Texas Tech. It's a tough position to be in, but It reminds me a lot, and I don't want to be this person that keeps harping on this. It reminds me a lot of that 2016 season.
Yeah, it certainly does. A couple of things with that. One, you're absolutely right. The Michigan game, even that Florida game. I think the biggest difference, though, Brian, is this game was a conference game. These are our
Yeah.
peers. This is the class that we were supposed to be around. Then I get it. With every conference, you're going to have your upper echelon and your lower echelon, right? It just shows you how far away we are from the conference. You mentioned the money, obviously that's the thing, right? But it just kind of shows you even our closer peers, if you will, a Houston, a Cincinnati, are both experiencing good seasons. West Virginia, who obviously also changed their coach, has some issues that we absolutely curb stomped. They're putting it together a little bit, right? So you kind of see where you are in the peer group, right? Michigan was one thing. That's a Big Ten school. We were an American school. Like, what was going to happen there? But now we're in the same family. But you mentioned quarterbacks, right? So here's the problem I'm having trying to think about how we move forward, right? So let's just call it what it is. It's not stated this way, but I'm going to assume that Jacurri and Cam Fancher have kind of soft opted out, right? Like at this point, whatever their injuries are, it's probably not worth it for them to try to come back, get re-injured.
Sure.
Perhaps they want to apply for medical red shirts and maybe move on, stay at UCF, who knows? So I'm going to assume with 2 games left in their mind, the risk may not be worth trying to get back on the football field, right? That's no knock on them. I think a lot of kids would make that same decision, but I think let's just call it what it is, right? We've got that situation. The challenge we have, Brian, is we don't have the 2026 starting quarterback on this team right now. I think we can all say Taven Jackson and I'll give him some credit too, right? Because I guess in theory he could opt out and be like, hey, I'm done. I don't want to play either. I'm getting my head bashed in every week. I don't want this. But It's clear he's lost some level of confidence right now. It's clear that he's lost some confidence. It looks like the coaches perhaps have lost some confidence in him. You don't see hardly any downfield shots. You see a lot of swing passes, check passes to running backs. They didn't obviously trust Davi to throw. I don't think he threw a pass in this game. I haven't read.
I don't think he did. Yeah, I'd have to go look at the stats. I don't think he did.
He's 0 for 0 with a sack, so I guess he dropped back once, and it didn't work out. And so it's clear Taven lost a little bit, perhaps, of his confidence. Maybe this coaching staff's lost confidence in him. And I don't know. Like, I'm not here. I don't know Taven Jackson. I'm not here to blame him. But if you're injured, you don't trust your offensive line. Your receivers are dropping balls. We saw 2 drop passes yesterday to hit guys in the hands and didn't make plays. It's clear that the quarterback's not on this roster. And that's where here's the macro level conversation I want to have with you, right? If I told you, Brian, we're going to have a rebuild, right? We're going to have a team. We're going to rebuild. We're going to have to reset this thing. And it's going to be a rough, year or two, but we're going to be okay, right? Most of us are like, oh, crap, I don't want to do that. But the only way you probably say to me, okay, Adam, you know what? Fine. I'm willing to do that is if you start to see kind of the building blocks and the foundation of what the future is going to look like, right? I sit here today and I say to myself, what are we building with for next year? Because all these guys can leave if they want to, right? And who's really kind of shown themselves where you go, this has been a tough year, but I'm really encouraged by what I saw out of blank, right? It's really tough to fill in that blank. And I think that's where this is getting harder as the season's going on is where you say, okay, you know what? It's a rebuild, Adam. I get it. We're going to rebuild this thing. We're going to get it back. We're going to do that. Where's the thing where you go, and you said 2016. I'm not picking on you, but because you said it, I'll bring that up, right? Like 2016, McKenzie didn't play well, but you're like, all right, we got this guy, we got that piece, we feel good about that. With everything really being a new team year over year, as you've been 10 games in, Brian, what do you feel good about going, okay, this rebuild has kind of been worth it? Like I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes.
I love it. Okay.
I don't want to be that guy that's, all doom and gloom and says that things are terrible and, we're never going to get better. I don't think that that's the case entirely. If I had to point to something, I would say the defense, right? The defense has been the bright spot for this team all year long. They have kept us in games, and they have been, no doubt, the strong suit of all 3 phases of the game for UCF this season. I think that at this point in the season, we've got a lot of injuries that have piled up, and that has affected the defense more so in this game than it has in prior games, right? As we get further in the season, we don't have the depth, obviously, to fill the defensive injuries that have taken place, and certainly the offense has had injuries too, but they're a completely different problem to deal with. I think that a lot of the guys who are hopefully returning as part of this defensive unit, along with Coach Grinch, give us something to build on for the 2026 season. I think Scott Frost understands that he came into this team late in the season, right? And I think that was probably part of the reason that they built into his contract that if you make a bowl, you get an extra year type of season, because he understood that he was, behind the 8 ball already by the time he signed to be the head coach with UCF. So I think that they were trying to find ways to motivate him and, potentially find a way to get a bowl eligible team in 2025. But Scott Frost knew that was going to be tough to do. So I think he understands that this offense, you don't have a quarterback, and I assume that he's going to go heavy in the portal this year for a quarterback. I'm sure they're looking at the high school recruits. Dante Carr has mentioned he's going to sign. Kane Archer is another name that's floating around out there. But those guys are probably not going to be ready for 2026. So he's going to have to go heavy and find a quarterback in the portal. And I think that they learn from, as you have mentioned, this bargain bin shopping that they had to do perhaps for the 2025 season, that they're going to have to pony up a little bit more money. So I think that they understand that from an offensive perspective. But the bright side, I think, and the building point to your question is the defense. I think the defense has played pretty well. And I think that they have some building blocks there that you'd like to feel comfortable with moving into the 2026 season.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I guess there's some building blocks on the defensive side of the football, assuming guys come back, right? I mean, we hope that they do, but a Sincere Edwards, a Horace Lockett, a John Walker, a Lewis Carter, Antoine Jackson, I think, has eligibility left. Braden Marshall, I think, has one more year left, right? So if those
half
guys,
of those guys were injured, by the way, for this game,
and yeah, that's really right. And if those guys come back, you do feel better about it. I just think we've gone through a 10-game slog of a 4-6 UCF team, and you just sit back and wonder, what do we have to show for it? Like, has Frost reset the culture? Perhaps, but culture is dependent upon the people that are working there, right? The people that are in the building, and it's much easier to have culture when you have continuity. And I just wonder how much continuity this team is going to have as we kind of look into next season, right? Again, who's a name on offense you're excited about coming back? Waden Charles, maybe. And it's really tough to evaluate Waden Charles because he hasn't had anyone really throwing the football to him, right? It's been a really pedestrian offense, so it's hard to evaluate him. I thought A.G. Adai came in and played really well, 4 carries, 20 yards. So is that a name, right? We didn't get to see Tavian Swint, unfortunately, at all on the field this year. We didn't get a chance to see Stacey Gage on the field this year. So I guess I'm struggling as I'm watching this game, and I'm saying, okay, we're getting our head smashed in. I knew this was going to happen. This feels like rock bottom. This feels like low point. But like, what do I have that I say to myself, okay, but like, this is going to be the thing that you use that helps us build this team. Like, part of me as a movie watcher, right, wants the Hollywood ending of Frost to go in the locker room after the game and say, you guys see that scoreboard right there? This is the last time that ever happens again. We never do this again, right? The problem is everybody in that locker room is eligible to leave next year. So who's that speech going to? Who's looking at that scoreboard saying, this one right here hurts, and this is the last time we're going to go through this, because I'll be damned if I'm going to let my team, and each one of you needs some pride, and we're going to go out there, we're going to, like, that feels great, but is that really can you do that in 2025 with the constant turnover of roster?
That applies to every team in college football these days, right? So,
fair,
I mean, it's
fair.
Any team, anybody can leave into the transfer portal when they feel like it. So, in one breath, you tell me you don't feel very comfortable with any of these guys that are perhaps on offense, defensive side, but on offense, you don't see anybody that jumps out at you as somebody that's going to, help this team win in 2026. But at the same time, you're complaining about the transfer portal, and these guys could leave. And I mean, maybe it's a good thing if they leave. I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of guys that have, had flashes. Dwayne Thomas Jr. had a decent game. They've been trying to get him involved in the running game a little bit more. Not the running game exactly, but these any quick passes, any kind of just trying to move the ball. Domer Kant has had a couple big plays. I mean, the receiving core we knew coming into the season was going to be a question mark. And it's turned out that question mark is probably exactly what we thought it was going to be. So again, to my point, which is I think that Scott Frost understands that. So I think that we're going to have to wait and see if Scott Frost is really as good at evaluating talent as perhaps we think he is, or at least we're hoping that he is, because he's going to have to go out and fill his bag with some new toys for the 2026 season, including a quarterback. including an offensive line, including an offensive line coach, rest in peace, Coach Cog, and as well as some receivers to throw the ball to. So a lot of work to be done in the offseason for this next team, no doubt.
Well, give me on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most, 1 being the least. Give me your level of trust in Scott Frost to do that.
On a scale of 1 to 5, I'll give him a 3. I mean, I think that's probably average. I haven't been given a reason to not believe him, but I also am a skeptic by nature. So we'll shoot right down the middle. If you want to point to anything, Adam, consider the fact that the cupboard was bare. If you want to compare this 2025 team to the RJ Harvey-led 2024 team that Gus Malzahn had last year. What did we finish? What was our overall score record last year? 4-8, compared to presumably a 5-7 record. So even with 60-plus new players, without your NFL second-round pick running back in RJ Harvey that Gus had at his disposal last year, we have still improved over what we did last year. And we arguably had a tougher schedule in 2025, several road games for conference play versus what we had last year. So, I mean, I guess if you want to put a fine point on it, that would be the main takeaway from a glass half full perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. We're putting a lot of eggs now in the Scott Frost basket that he's going to be able to come up with a plan that allows this team to sort of, again, kind of rebuild, right? I guess I'm trying to talk myself out of, is this a lost season? Like, is this just a lost season? It was just this was the way it was always going to go. And is this just going to be a lost year where in the annals of history at one point in time when you and I are doing this show, hopefully 20 years from now, we're going to be like, do you remember that 2025 season where we just didn't have any, like, is this going to be kind of a lost year in terms of, okay, what do we have to show for it? Right. Maybe it's a culture reset. I guess that's maybe, fast forwarding a little bit. That's kind of what I want to see these last two games is what does the springboard look like as we kind of transition away from the season into the off season, right? What decisions is Frost and his staff making? Are we trying to get some young guys some opportunities here? Are you seeing anything different out of the players? Is there going to be fight in this team down the end? You mentioned 2024. I think it was pretty obvious. That team kind of gave up there towards the end of the season, right? That Utah game was tough. I think some guys were playing hard, but I think a lot of guys were just kind of figuring out, okay, how do I get out of here? Hell, Gus was figuring out how the hell do I get out of here, right? So
that's true.
So can you see some fight now in these last two games? Can you kind of see what this could look like and what this is, right? Because we sit here 4-6, and again, this is probably where we want to be, but I think this is a perfect example of just how far down the totem pole we are right now. And does Scott Frost, Terry Mohajir, and others have the plan to get UCF on that upward trajectory?
Two thoughts come to mind. One, in the post-game presser, somebody asked him, and it might have been Trace. I got to do a better job of listening who's asking these questions, but
just say somebody it's Trace, if it was Trace and you didn't.
I assume it was Trace, yeah. So when Trace asked the question, Adam, he asked about, how do you take this, or what do you apply to the senior game night, which is upcoming, the last game in the bounce house, senior day for a lot of these teammates that are going to be leaving UCF at the end of the season. How important is this game? And Scott Frost's answer was, this game is everything. So he's excited to get back to work.
His quote was, this game is the season.
This game is the season. You're right. I apologize. This game,
which means, by the way, you can't lose that now because now you said everything's riding on this game.
Absolutely, and I think he knows that, right? I think he's probably read the writing on the wall. He knows that BYU, while maybe not a Texas Tech, is also a very, very good team. So this game is, in fact, the season, Adam. If we are going to get one more win, it's certainly going to be against Oklahoma State rather than BYU if you had to pick one. But I think that he understands how important it is to go out strong, at least in the bounce house, to get these seniors a win on senior day, senior night, whatever you want to call it. So I think that he's still energized. He certainly does not seem downtrodden in any way. He has, said several times now that he sounds like a broken record because he said, this is going to be a rebuild process. This isn't going to happen overnight. We weren't going to come in and go undefeated. So I think he is still pretty grounded in that perspective, which makes me feel better. Again, that could just be coach speak. Maybe he's just telling the media what we all want to hear. But I think he legitimately believes that this is, obviously going to be hard work to build this team, and I think he knew that coming in.
Yeah, he looks frustrated. I think at times, like almost kind of like, man, like I'm doing everything I can. Like he looks frustrated, I think, at the podium. And I will say this: it is helpful as much as I can bag on his, hey, we're close, we're close, we're close. He at least is providing some level of thoughtful answer at the press conference and not just doing mindless coach speak like we heard from Gus, like we heard from Heupel, right? Like we just heard a lot of mindless, like we're gonna go 1-0, we got to get back and attack the grass, whatever, right? You're starting to hear him at least say something positive, but he kind of looks frustrated. Like he almost looks like he wants to say to us all, like, I told you we didn't have the horses to continue to do what I wanted to do, right? Yeah. And I pulled a rabbit out of a hat to beat West Virginia and to beat North Carolina. I had us in the Kansas game and we blew that one. We probably could have won the Houston game and we blow that one, right? Like, I think he's trying to tell us, like, I'm doing everything. I'm throwing everything against the wall here. Like, to use a baseball analogy, like he's a pitcher in the last inning. He's got nothing left, but he's trying to get a couple of outs, right? Like, It kind of feels like maybe that's what he wants to say. But again, this team just doesn't have the horses, doesn't have the stamina, doesn't have the depth, doesn't have the consistency, doesn't have the execution, doesn't have the playmaking. And I think he's trying to not say that, but also kind of say that, which is hard as a fan because he's right. Because we can see it. I have eyeballs. I can see what happens at the games, right? And so it's frustrating because it's like, man, we don't have those things. How are we ever going to do that? How are we going to get those things? And that's where the cynic, the glass half empty guy, the guy that thinks this guy is falling, I'm like, how are we ever going to get out of this one, Brian? Because now we got a whole new team again. How are we going to go to the quarterback again? Like, and again, even though we have 2 games left, there's a lot to unpack with this season, and we'll do that a ton in the offseason, but there's still a lot to unpack.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that Terry Mohajir has made some comments in the last couple of weeks indicating that perhaps Scott Frost is going to have a little more NIL money to go ahead and play with in the offseason this year. He has made comments that, why would we bother to go ahead and pay some of these players that are right out of high school with our NIL dollars rather than go find somebody that's got some experience and some talent in the portal. So I wonder how much of that is Terry pushing Scott or Scott pushing Terry to say, look, we need to get some donor dollars in here, some NIL money for us to be able to go out and fill some of the gaps that we have in at least in the offense and special teams and defense as well. So I wonder how much money they're going to be spending in the offseason to go out and secure some of these guys that Scott Frost is going to evaluate as potential needs to come into this program in the future.
I don't love Terry giving away the blueprint a little bit. Just keep that close to the vest next time, Terry.
That's not what Terry does.
Absolutely not. B, I understand the mathematics of that, where you go, hey, I've got player A who've never stepped foot on a college football field, wants X. I've got player B who at least has played at this team and wants that. Like, I understand the mathematics of all that too, but I also think that you have to find a happy medium there. I'm really confused. And I actually asked this question not knowing the answer, Brian. I don't know if you know it either. I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize. I'm confused at how money is going to work next season, right? We know that in July rev share started. We know that like the Texas Tech situation, they front loaded a bunch of guys with NIL contracts earlier in the year to be able to kind of get them in. But then July comes around and rev share starts. So in 2026, we're back on a rev share model. So when you say NIL, I don't know what's acceptable anymore. I know there were collectives were allowed, then they're not allowed, then they have to go through.
But now they're back again.
Yeah, the committee. You have to kind of prove valuation there. Obviously, there are deals you can do as an entity if you want to go promote a podcast, a car dealership, a restaurant. You can do that as a player. So I actually don't know how much NIL, traditional NIL, is going to factor into it. Now, I think what could be interesting is what you also I think are talking a little bit is the rev share dollars.
Yeah.
So as of 2025, and this may change in 26, I don't know the number, $20.5 million can go to UCF for student athlete rev share. Most schools took that $20.5 million and did some sort of a split, 75% to football, 10% to basketball, 5% to 5% to 5%, whatever your split was. So with Scott lobbying for more of that 20.5, is he saying, hey, I need 85. I don't need 75. I need some more of that money. Is he Is he looking at valuations of player position slots and saying, I paid X this year for a quarterback, I need to pay more next year, or I invested this in line, I need to invest more this year? I'm really fascinated, and I don't know if we'll ever know the answers, by the way, and how all that financial stuff will come together and how that can shape, obviously, what Frost and staff want to do with the team in 2026.
I think that we won't ever have an answer as to what specific, number dollars are floating around, and, what player is getting how much money. I mean, we don't even know what Taven's getting this year versus some of the other players. So I don't know that we'll ever have a super clear picture as to the dollar figures and how much money UCF athletics is allocating to football versus other sports in the UCF program. But I think that Scott Frost understands that, now that he's had at least a full year at UCF. Well, I guess in December he'll have had a full year at UCF, and he kind of sees the landscape of college football. We have to remember he was out of the picture of college football for a while, as a lot of these NIL, collective, rev share things were happening. So he was on the outside looking in. So I think that Terry and most of the ADs across the NCAA are still trying to navigate this jungle that is in front of them and figure out, how do we do this? What's allowed? What's not allowed? How much money can we legitimately spend on a football program? And is it, within the confines of the rules of the NCAA and all these things that are happening? So I think that that's one factor. And I think that we'll probably see that Scott Frost understands that, hey, to run the offense that I want to run, I need a Mackenzie Milton, or I need a, whatever quarterback that he wants. And he's going to have a better idea of what that quarterback is going to cost in terms of bringing that quarterback into the program, whether it's $1 million that they got to shell out or 500,000 or whatever it is. He understands what he has to have to work with in order to make his system work and to get UCF competitive in the Big 12. So I don't know that we'll ever know what, you and I will never see those numbers and understand what they are. But I think that they're still kind of exploring that and kind of figuring out what's going to work and what's not going to work for this program.
Let's look ahead to Oklahoma State on Saturday. Brian, if I made you the head coach, who do you start at quarterback?
I think we got to see how it plays out in practice, Adam.
This guy. Look at you. You're good.
So if you believe what happened, or at least what was reported to us, Taven was banged up, right? He came into the game with some hamstring injuries. That was why Davi was put in at the end of the Houston game, because Taven wasn't moving very well in and out of the pocket because of this hamstring injury.
And really quickly, he did have his knee wrapped at the end of the game. He
Correct.
took a hit at one point and was limping, so we don't yet know if he has another injury on top of that based on Saturday.
Correct. In one of the post-game pressers, or was it the post-game presser? It might have been the radio broadcast with Daniels. They mentioned an injury for Taven, and it wasn't his hamstring they mentioned. I don't know if it was an ankle or something else.
Yeah.
Was it a knee injury? Okay.
His knee, yeah, there's a picture out there. His knee is wrapped. He has an ice pack on his knee coming off the field. Now, everybody maybe has an ice pack on their knee. I don't know. But yes, his knee.
It's the end of the season. You're banged up. That's going to happen. So I think that if Taven is healthy, I think you go out and you start Taven, right? He has, for better or for worse, shown that he can win games for the Knights, at least at home in the bounce house. So I think if you have a healthy Taven, you go out and you start him. Now, if he's not 100% and he's not practicing well and he's, perhaps not ready to go, then I think that you might as well put Davi in there, give him the majority of the QB1 snaps in practice this week, see what the kid can do. What do you have to lose at this point? We're not making a bowl unless some miracle happens at BYU. So let's see what the kid can do. He's obviously got a pair of legs on him. He's very fast. He can move. I didn't hate him throwing the ball in the Houston game, not to go back and harp on that again. I think that with a little more preparation and perhaps time with the starting receivers, he could perhaps develop some chemistry with them. Let's see what he can do. I mean, this is the time to do it against an Oklahoma State team, which is, not in the best position right now.
Yeah, obviously we won't know about Taven Jackson's health. I think Wednesday is the first availability that we'll get from a medical staff update, and we'll see where he's at. And what do we have to lose, Brian? You know, we have to lose the season, because this game is the season.
This game is everything,
according to Scott Frost. But no, look, I get that. I'm in a negative place with UCF football right now, and I wish I want to try to find some positivity, right? And it's and that. Coming off Saturday, it's really hard to find positivity, right? But you can really just chalk it up and say Texas Tech is just that good, and we would have, we don't belong on that field with Texas Tech right now. Maybe, Scott Frost says, "Get us while you can now, get us now," because in a couple of years. But I think it would be interesting to see what he decides to do on Saturday. Like, does he get these young guys some run? Does he get AG Adai some more carries? It look pretty good. Does Davi get in there and we try something different with Davi, right? Obviously it's a senior night. Do you try to play as many seniors as you can? Miles Montgomery did not play against Texas Tech. I guess he would be it's in between him and Rubel, right? Like the loudest applause when they come on the field. Is it between him and Rubel for senior night?
It's got to be. I mean, they're both captains of this team, right? They both went to Big 12 Media Days to represent UCF. So I don't know if one has got a bigger following than the other.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how we'll ever judge who got the loudest applause, but you would think those two would be the two that would get the biggest ovation when they trot out on Saturday. And so, does Miles get back? How does Frost use all that too, right? And look, I think if you can come back with a nice win against an Oklahoma State team that right now you're supposed to beat by more than 2 touchdowns, right? We're supposed to be 2 touchdowns better than Oklahoma State right now. You've seen them play. That's not far-fetched, but if you've seen UCF play, you go, how the hell are we scoring 2 touchdowns? So something's going to have to give on the season on Saturday.
We're a different team on the road than we are at home. So
maybe
the bounce house magic is coming back a little bit.
Well, not against Houston. It wasn't back, and it wasn't back against Kansas. But I digress against all that. But like I guess the net of it, right, is Texas Tech is a damn good football team. They invested in their team for this particular purpose so they can go out and be this type of team. But it just sucks, man. We're seeing teams like they're trying to get their guy like a Heisman Trophy. Like we are their North Carolina A&T. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what we did to North Carolina A&T, that's what they did to us. And man, that just sucks being in that position and saying
it was crazy to see a non-conference game so late in the season. It's not in the SEC. This
how
is
do
crazy.
We get out of this? How did we get in this? And how do we get out of this? Right. And it's not going to happen this season, obviously, but you can maybe still find some bright spots. So we'll see what happens on Saturday, Brian. Oklahoma State, 4 p.m. kick. I think I don't want to break any news here. I don't have a breaking news sounder. I think I may have. No, I don't have a breaking news sounder.
Good try.
You are not going to be at this game? Is this the first home game Brian W. Peterson will miss this year?
I will miss this game, yes. My wife has a work conference out of town, so I'm on daddy duty this weekend, watching the kids by myself. So I will not be in attendance, sadly, at this game, which is too bad because I was really hoping this was going to be our bowl-eligible game. But I guess no harm, no foul since I won't be there this week.
We'll see what happens to the vibes there. Do you have ESPN plus? Because this thing is buried on whatever.
I got to figure out how to watch this game because I don't know what I'm going to do right now. I mean, I might just listen to it on the radio.
You may need like MacGyver and antennas and some kind of like tinfoil. Like, I don't know how you're going to find this game that gets relegated. There's 3.
I got to call Elo. He knows how to watch every game.
I've heard that. There are 3 networks that could have had this game. They're like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're all set. You guys can TNT Plus or whatever you want to put this game on. But 4 o'clock, if you're not in the bounce house, you can watch it on ESPN Plus. Or if you're at the game, hopefully we cheer on. A nice start time, 4 o'clock. Weather should be good, Brian.
Should be.
Curious the crowd. Can I get a prediction on the crowd? Now, there's obviously what you
crowd,
and then what's actually going to be there. 44,206 is the capacity attendance crowd. Brian Peterson, if I set the over under announced at 34.5, you taking the over or the under?
The announced is definitely going to be over 34.
Okay.
They'll announce 40 and change at the very least.
Okay. Actual humans in attendance.
Actual human, I'm definitely taking the under.
Okay. Even though it's
give me 32.
Can it be senior night though when there are like 68 new guys and you're like you don't even know who half these guys are and that they're walking out? Like that feels weird.
Can it be senior night if it's a 4 o'clock kick on ESPN plus like you said?
That's gonna have to be, and hopefully we get a win to go 5-6. Man, at least let's win this one. Let's win the season.
Yeah.
On Saturday. Maybe I'll be in a better mood if we win this season. Then I'll be annoyed again after, and we play BYU at the end of the year and yada, yada, yada. But that's for another time. That's for another show for us to be worried about. Again, fun week around here at the Sons of UCF around the kingdom this week. Pegasus Podcast. Christian is back from across the pond. So we will be back on the Pegasus Podcast this week. With Suns Live this week. Men's Hoops has a game Monday nights. They probably have a game later in the week that I can't think about off the top of my head. Again, men's and women's soccer will both be in action. I don't know for the home games or not yet, but keep all of that in mind as you think about where to get your content here, because the Sons of UCF and the 714 interns we have will have you covered. So so stick it here at the Sons of UCF. For Brian, I'm Adam. Thanks for joining in, everybody. And we'll talk to you next week, everybody. Go Knights.
Charge on.